Right now, somewhere in your garden, a bird is listening to you, not the way you might casually notice a sound, not as background noise to be filtered out. It is processing your voice the way a forensic analyst processes a recording, separating it from the ambient noise of the environment, comparing it against stored templates, classifying the result. And if it has heard you before, it already knows what you are. Most people who talk to the birds in their yard, and most people do, even the ones who won't admit it, assume the birds tolerate it, the way they might tolerate the wind or the sound of a distant car. Something in the environment, not relevant, not processed. The science says something different. What a bird actually hears when you speak is not noise, it is information. And what it does with that information is one of the most underexplored stories in the science of animal cognition. Today, we're going into what birds actually hear, how they process it, what they do with it, and why one bird in your garden, a bird whose voice you would recognize anywhere if you stopped long enough to listen, uses sound at a level of complexity that most people never fully grasp. Part 1. The acoustic world a bird lives in. Begin with the basic fact. A bird's hearing range overlaps substantially with a human's, but its processing capacity operates at a resolution we cannot match. Researchers discovered this first in studies of birdsong playback. When slowed to 1/4 speed, birdsong that sounds to a human like a rapid musical blur resolves into dozens of distinct sequential elements. Individual notes, micro-intervals, subtle frequency shifts that the bird produces and receives as separate acoustic events. The bird is generating and perceiving detail that is invisible to the human ear at normal speed. This is not a peripheral quirk. It is the core of how birds navigate their world. In a dense woodland or a populated garden, the acoustic environment is overwhelmingly complex. Dozens of species calling simultaneously, wind and water and human activity layered underneath. A bird that cannot process this complexity with speed and precision is a bird that cannot survive in it. The resolution of avian hearing evolved under extreme pressure, and it does not switch off when the sound source is human. Part 2. What they do with a human voice. A human voice is, from a bird's auditory perspective, an extremely distinctive sound. It occupies a specific frequency range. It has a characteristic rhythm, the cadence of speech, with its pauses and emphases and tonal variation. It has timbre, the quality of a specific voice that distinguishes it from every other voice in the same frequency range. And it has behavioral predictability. It tends to precede specific events, appear at specific times, emanate from a specific direction. Birds process all of this. Every element of a human voice that seems arbitrary to us, the exact pitch of it, the rhythm of how we speak, the pattern of when we tend to appear in the garden, is acoustic data that a bird can log, store, and retrieve. The landmark research here comes from studies on northern mockingbirds, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Researchers who approached mockingbird nests were individually recognized by the birds, not by face alone, but by the combination of visual and acoustic cues the birds associated with each person. When playback experiments isolated the acoustic component, birds showed measurably different responses to familiar versus unfamiliar voices, even without visual confirmation. In other words, if you were out of sight but within earshot, the bird would still know it was you. Part 3. How the file gets built. The first time you speak near a bird, it has nothing to compare your voice to. The second time, it begins building a template. By the 10th or 20th encounter, the template is detailed enough to function as a recognition tool. What makes this extraordinary is not just that the template is stored, it is that the template is updated continuously and associated with outcomes. Your voice is not filed as an isolated acoustic fact. It is filed as a voice that has always preceded specific events, your appearance, your movement pattern, whether you ever posed a threat. This is associative memory of a high order. Not just this sound exists, but this sound belongs to this individual who has appeared in this territory, and this is what that individual has always done. Crows demonstrate this most dramatically, as we explored in the last video. But the capacity for voice-specific associative memory is present across a much wider range of species than most people realize. Robins, sparrows, starlings, any bird that lives in proximity to humans over time. You've been speaking near these birds for months or years. In that time, they have built a remarkably detailed acoustic profile of you. The question is not whether the file exists. The question is, what is in it? Part 4. The bird that uses sound better than almost any other. There is a bird that sings in your garden, if you're in Britain or much of Europe, whose relationship with sound goes beyond anything we have discussed so far. The song thrush. You know its voice before you know its name. It is the bird that sings from the top of a hedge in early spring, repeating each phrase 2 or 3 times before moving to the next. A rich, loud, endlessly varied song that carries across a garden and into the next one, and the one after that. It is, by any measure, one of the most acoustically complex singers in the European garden. What most people do not know is why it repeats. The repetition is not decoration. It is not the thrush being emphatic. Each repetition of a phrase is a broadcast, and the repetition ensures that the acoustic information reaches birds at different distances, with different sound masking between them. The first repetition reaches nearby birds clearly. The second carries to the middle distance. The third, in some conditions, to birds significantly farther away. The song thrush is not just singing, it is transmitting, with a technique that compensates for environmental acoustic degradation. The song is engineered to travel. A male song thrush has a repertoire of between 50 and 100 distinct phrases, and in some documented individuals, considerably more. Each phrase is unique. Each is repeated consistently across days and weeks, such that neighboring thrushes learn to recognize not just the species, but the individual. This thrush, this voice, this territory. The song thrush does not have a song. It has a signature. And when a song thrush hears your voice in its territory, it applies the same processing capacity it uses to pass those 100 phrases to the acoustic information you are generating. Your voice is one more element in the complex sound environment it navigates every day. It is, without exaggeration, better at processing sound than you are. Part 5. What you can do right now. The 3-minute routine that matters most in a heat wave. Everything we have covered so far is science. This part is practical. And it matters particularly in July and August, when temperatures push into ranges that are genuinely dangerous for small birds. A small bird loses water rapidly in heat. Unlike mammals, birds cannot sweat. They pant, and panting accelerates water loss. On a hot day, above 30 degrees Celsius, a small bird like a sparrow, a goldfinch, or a song thrush can become dangerously dehydrated within hours if it cannot find water. The 3-minute routine is this. In the morning, before the heat builds, fill your bird bath or any shallow water container. A plant saucer, a upturned bin lid, anything, with fresh, cool water. Place it in a spot with clear sight lines in at least 2 directions, so birds can approach without a predator being able to reach them unseen. Change the water at midday if possible. Standing water in direct sun warms quickly and loses its value as a cooling resource. That is the routine. 3 minutes, twice a day in peak heat. What the voice recognition science adds to this is something most people miss. Consistency matters. Birds that learn your voice associate it with outcomes. If you are the person who appears every morning and provides water, and they learn your voice, your movement pattern, your schedule, they will begin to arrive before you have finished. They will hear you coming. The song thrush that sings from your hedge at 6 a.m. is not indifferent to your presence. It has been logging you since you first started appearing in its territory. It knows your schedule. On a hot morning, when water is the most critical resource in your garden, the bird that has the most detailed file on you is the bird most likely to arrive first, stay longest, and survive the day. The science of voice recognition is not abstract. In a heat wave, it is the difference between a bird that comes to your garden and one that doesn't. The song thrush will be back on that hedge tomorrow morning, repeating its phrases, transmitting its signature across 4 gardens in each direction, managing its acoustic territory with a precision most people walk past without hearing. And if you have been in that garden for any length of time, speaking, moving, appearing at your usual hour, it has a file on you that is more detailed than you would expect. Your voice has been heard, it has been processed, it has been stored. The question is not whether the bird knows your voice. The question is whether you have ever really stopped to listen to it. Tell me in the comments. Do you have a song thrush in your area? And do you keep water out for birds in summer? I read every one.